It is exactly 6:30 now. So I'd like to call our meeting to order. It is July 20th, 2022, and we can start by the reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, can I get a roll call, please?
Sure. Evans?
Here.
Fanganello? Rudder?
Here.
Fraser?
Here.
Yoshida?
Here.
Scrable?
Here.
Colbert?
Here.
Bulig?
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, and just because this is our first time going through this, I'll just provide a little bit of an explanation, but if there are consent matters that someone wishes to pull, we'll do that at the time of the consent agenda. So at this point, when we're approving the agenda, it's just the approval of the agenda, and there'll be a period of time later where we can pull stuff off of the consent agenda. So may I get a motion for the approval of the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Everyone in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, and if you've had a chance to review the minutes of June 15th, 2022, I will give you a moment to look at those, and I'll take a motion whenever you're ready.
Motion to approve the minutes from June 15th.
Second.
All right, those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, next up would be public comment for...
Madam Chair?
Yes.
At what point are we going to introduce the new staff members? Should we do that before public comment or after?
I was going to do that after, but I do have it on my list.
Okay, thanks. Just checking.
No, thank you for checking, keeping me in line. So this would be the time for public to provide comment on any items not on our regular agenda, and I believe, so I guess it would be under the regular business. So if there's anyone from the public who would like to provide comments, this would be the time to do so. Okay, seeing none, I will like to turn over to staff for a minute to introduce some new folks we have in the room.
Great, thank you so much, Chairwoman Rudder. To my left is our new planner. Her name is Camille Kuipers. She comes to us from the private sector, and we are very excited to have her. To my right is Carmen Jackson Brown. She's with the City Attorney's Office and will be joining us this evening instead of Lori, but see her often. And then up on the dais, we have Michelle Hammond. She's our new planning technician and has joined us from many sectors, but we're excited to have her and her experience. So thank you.
Awesome. Welcome to you all. Excited to have you here. All right, so now we'll move on to the consent matters. This would be the time, if anyone would like to remove a site development plan from those listed, this would be the time where I'd ask for a motion to do that.
Madam Chair, I'd like to remove 23 Washington Avenue from the consent agenda.
All right, so I have a motion to remove, or just the request, and then...
The request to remove 23 Washington Avenue from the consent agenda.
Okay, we will need 3 votes to remove that item. So I would need a motion and a second, and then a total of 3 votes in the affirmative.
Okay, so I move to remove 23 Washington Avenue from the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
And then...
So third. Yeah.
let's see. Do I need the roll call, or is it just the...
Take a vote, yeah.
Okay.
Just see how many are in approval of that.
Okay. So then may I get a roll call?
Sure.
Please?
Evans?
Yes.
Rudder?
Yes.
Fraser?
No.
Yoshida?
Yes.
Scrable?
Yes.
Colbert?
Yes.
Bulig?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, awesome, thank you. So we will take this item and move it to the end of our regular business to discuss it. Are there any other items that Planning Commission would like to remove and have a discussion about later in the agenda? Okay, in that case, I would like, I need a motion for the consent matters, items A through C. That would exclude item D, which we'll hear at the end of regular business.
Motion to approve the consent matters A, B, and C.
Second.
Is there a roll call on this one? I forget. Sorry.
You could probably do a vote, just all those in
Okay.
favor. Yeah.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you for bearing with me. It's my first meeting I'm leading, so
You're doing great.
I'm trying to figure out everything. Okay. So moving on to regular business. It is the 113 Ford Street major adjustment and ratification of the director's determination of approval for a form zone site development plan. And we have Lauren providing the presentation.
Good evening. Thank you so much this evening for the opportunity to present to you regarding the case PC 2217, which is a form zone site plan and major adjustment for 113 Ford Street. The request is for a total of 587, excuse me, there was a typo on the slide, 587 square feet of addition and an exception for the front garage setbacks. I will get to that momentarily. This property is in the peripheral zone and is in the R1 district. It's an existing house and generally follows the suburban house form type. Next slide. So as you can see here on this slide, there's the general location. It's off of Ford Street near 2nd Street. And the existing house was built in 1959 and the existing square feet is 1,429. So in staff's analysis on this project, sorry, I have the wrong one on there, but it's a suburban house type. It's, as you can see here, the house in the suburban form type is generally to the front of the lot. There is a access from the primary street. In this case, as you can see, the existing house, it's not quite in the front of the lot, it's more in the center of the lot, but it does have the access from the primary street. And has and it is like others on this street, on Ford Street. Next slide. So this is the proposed site plan. The applicant is requesting a major adjustment for the location of the garage. So in the suburban form type, the garage is required to be 6 foot setback from the primary principal facade. The principal facade is being expanded slightly with the facade renovation and a slight addition, and the garage is proposed in the front of the property adjacent to the existing driveway. The applicant is also proposing some additional landscaping on this property with additional shrubs and an additional tree in addition to the existing tree to meet the landscaping requirements of 1829. Next slide. So as you can see here, this is the proposed elevation. It's quite different than the existing house. There is a change in the facade, a change in the roof form, and in the front you can see the garage, the proposed garage. The roof form is lower on the garage, the shed roof form is lower on the garage, although it is in the front, and the materials are consistent with the rest of the house. Next slide. This is the proposed rear of the property. As you can see, it's a walkout basement, but as you can see, the change in the roof form is apparent on this elevation as well. And then here is the side elevations. As you can see on the south elevation, you can kind of see where the garage will protrude in the front with the shed roof form and the stairs that go down to the bottom level. And on the other side, you really can't, you can see the garage slightly, but mostly you see the deck and the existing north side of the house. These 3D elevations were provided by the applicant. They show how the garage relates to the structure. As you can see here, the garage is slightly in front of the principal structure, but the roof forms do match as proposed. So in review of the major adjustment, The property meets, the requests for the additions meet all the required setbacks with the exception of the front garage setback. So the suburban form type says that the garage has to be 6 feet behind the principal structure. In this case, the existing house has no garage, and the principal structure is about 30 feet back on the existing lot. So it is kind of in the middle of the lot. The suburban setback, suburban form house form setback is about 15 feet. So the house is approximately, double back from from what would be required. The applicant is requesting that the garage be 7 feet 2 inches in front of the principal structure. And kind of how that math works is that the major adjustment can be approved for up to 50% reduction of the setback. So the required setback would be, if you did the math, it would be 33 feet approximately. You splice that in half and it comes to around 15 feet setback if you move it from half of the required setback. Your packet has some more detailed math on that and how staff came to that conclusion. The staff concludes that the request is no more than 50% reduction in setback. Additionally, the 15-foot setback is consistent with the form type. So if the garage were to be converted into the future into other space, the house would not, the house would meet setbacks. Next slide, please. So according to 1829, the major adjustment for practical difficulties can be requested to be granted by a planning commission for any form, design, or landscaping, fencing, or perimeter wall standards to overcome practical difficulties presented by the lot. And the standards would be that the major adjustment is appropriate to overcome practical difficulty that is presented by the unusual physical condition of the lot, which may include the location and configuration of existing buildings, structures or natural features, or an irregular shaped lot or elevation of the lot compared to other lots in the vicinity. Staff concluded that this would be the only logical place on the property to place a garage. The house is existing in the middle of the lot, so there would be no way really to have the garage further back, and there's also a significant grade drop in the back of the property. So seeing that there would really be no other practical way to fit a attached garage in this property, staff agrees that this is an unusual physical condition of the lot with the location and configuration of existing buildings is the primary reason for this request. The major adjustment should also not materially reduce the light, air, or privacy of adjoining lots, and the major adjustment does not materially undermine the purposes or guidelines associated with the standard or the sought. So staff agrees that the major adjustment requested is reasonable in this case and is really due to the condition of the house on the lot as it is today. Next slide. So we did find that also that the setback was no more than a 50% reduction of the setback of the house if you take the half of the required setback of what the garage would be on the lot. It does not create a fire hazard or fire code nonconformity, and does not interfere with required site distance triangles or encroach onto any drainage or any other easements. So with that, just the next few slides just have some photos of the elevation. You can kind of see the change in the existing driveway, along with where the garage would be placed, sort of where that door is and the driveway is on that picture. Next slide. And so with that, staff did find that the site plan proposed meets all the standards and applicable guidelines of 1829 and applicable standards of 1840. Staff recommends ratification of the decision that is conditional on approval of the requested major adjustment. And staff does find that the major adjustment is warranted based on the garage is minimalized architecturally with a lower roof pitch. The front end is only large enough to fit 2 cars in, which is a pretty average garage generally here at Golden. So with that, staff does recommend approval, and the director does determine the site plan meets all the other requirements of the form zone. And the applicant's here if you have any questions, of course.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Does Planning Commission have any questions for staff at this time?
I got it.
Commissioner Colbert.
Are there other houses on the street that have similar garages out kind of in front of the primary structure?
Most of the houses, if you could go back to the slide, Michelle, with the aerial, which is I think slide 2. Most of the houses on this street have a similar layout. With the lots are a little bit shallow. Also, they're also somewhat shallow. So most of the houses on this street, on Ford Street, do have, some of them do have garages that are flush with the front of the house, or no garages, depending on the age of the house.
Thank you.
Commissioner Evans.
Yes, I've got 2 questions. One procedural, because we've never done one of these before.
Yep.
Is this considered like a hearing where we open public comment, or is it just staff and applicant and discussion? And
Right, it's not a hearing process, it's a ratification process is what we're calling it. So it's really just commission, staff, and the applicant.
Okay.
Including this major adjustment piece?
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, just to clarify, for the major adjustment, it does require a public hearing. So there is the opportunity for public comment on this item, not for the item that you removed from consent, but for this item, the public may comment for the major adjustment.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, so then my question to staff. In the packet, you on your recommendation, you say the adjustment is not used to increase residential density, including allowed accessory dwelling units that are not otherwise allowed. Is that like a statement of fact, or is that your? I'm trying to understand if what you're saying here is that the addition of this will not grant an additional dwelling unit or grant ADU?
Yeah, there's some standards in the rules of major adjustments. There's kind of there's the ones I stated in the presentation are specific to for practical. So getting used to the verbiage. Practical difficulties. But there's also sort of general major adjustment language that talks about sort of that is the intent of the form type.
Okay. So what you're saying is that the adjustment is being requested for the intent of not increasing density?
Right. It's
Okay.
not, the intent of the request is not, overall is not increasing density. It's not, so the intent of the form type, and then, more specifically, it's not, the other things, does not create a fire hazard, it's not in any easements, et cetera.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? All right. Would the applicant like to come forward?
My name is Chris Chidley. I'm the architectural firm for this project called, my company's called Fury Design, but you can address me as Chris. Stays.
Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add to staff's presentation?
I can give a little bit more clarification on the question that Patricia asked. So I might refer to Lauren in regards to this. So there is a maximum that a suburban house is allowed to have in terms of square footage. We are actually less than that. So again, it's just reaffirming that we are not asking for a major adjustment to enlarge the property larger than what the suburban code has required. And then secondly, this property is set back quite a distance from the street. Like 15 foot is the normal setback for a house. We're about 30 feet with the standards that are required for a suburban. So therefore, like this garage that's in front, we're not even impeding on what would be the regular setback because it is pushed so far back. And then lastly, Lauren mentioned that there's a walkout at the back. There's a one-story drop. So with the house, because it occupies the whole of the lot, with 5 foot on either side, it is impossible to build a garage behind. There's no alleyway. There's no means to get there. A skateboard would be a means to get to the backyard.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Are there any other questions for the applicant or the applicant's representative? No? Okay, seeing none. Thank you. Appreciate it. At this time, I'd like to open it up for public comment for anyone who would like to speak specifically on the request for the major adjustment. Seeing none, I'll close public comment and open it up for commissioner deliberation. Commissioner Evans?
I think this is the perfect use of the code. I think it's, we all know Golden does not have cookie cutter lots. It doesn't have cookie cutter homes, and granting this kind of seems like a no-brainer to me.
I would like to, piggyback on that and say, yeah, I mean, I know the area well, and you there's no other place you can put that. So I think that makes sense.
Any other thoughts? I also agree. I also know this area very well, and I understand the limitations that this lot has and this area has. So I agree. I think this is the perfect application of this type of adjustment, so to speak. So in that case, unless there's any other comments or deliberation, I would accept a motion, which can be found at the end of the staff report for this item. And it would include both the approval for the adjustment, and I don't know if we need a separate approval. It is two? Okay. So 2 separate motions, please.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the major adjustment on section 1829-321-1E2 of the zoning code requested in case number PC 22-17 regarding the front garage setback requirement for the suburban house form type based on the finding that the review criteria set forth in section 1829-610-5 of the zoning code have been satisfied as detailed in the staff report prepared for the July 20th, 2022 Planning Commission hearing and based on other evidence presented to the Planning Commission at the hearing on this case.
I second.
May I have a roll call, please?
Sure. Evans?
Yes.
Rudder?
Yes.
Frazier?
Yes.
Yoshida?
Yes.
Scrabel?
Yes.
Colbert?
Yes.
Bulig?
Yep.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And the second motion?
I move to ratify the City of Golden Community and Economic Development Director's approval of the site development plan for 113 Ford Street as requested in case number PC 22-17, based on finding that all applicable standards in chapters 1829 and 1840 of the zoning code have been satisfied, as detailed in the staff report prepared for the July 20th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting, and based on other evidence presented to the Planning Commission at the meeting on this case.
Second?
Can I get a roll call, please?
Evans?
Yes.
Rudder?
Yes.
Frazier?
Yes.
Yoshida?
Yes.
Scrabel?
Yes.
Colbert?
Yes.
Bulig?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Congratulations. You have your approval. All right. And so now will be the time where we hear the item that was removed from the consent agenda, which would be the item D, 23 Washington Avenue. So I guess, again, this is a little bit new, so is there going to be a staff presentation on this one as well? Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Camille.
All right, good evening, board. The case that I'm presenting to you tonight is PC 2219 FCSP for 23 Washington Avenue. The specific request is a site development plan for the construction of a new home within the transition form overlay district that follows the Village House form type and standards. The applicant for this request is Christopher and Emily Henderson, who live at 938 Conifer Drive here in Colton. The subject property is a 6,302 square foot lot located on the northeast quarter of Washington Ave and 1st Street in North Golden. The lot is currently zoned R3 and within the transition form zone district. The applicant is proposing a site plan that meets the requirements of the Village House form type, which is allowed within the transition form zone district. The Village House is intended for lots with alley access. Access to this lot will be taken from a rear alley. As is outlined in the staff report provided in your packets, this proposal meets the special characteristics, including front, middle, and rear building envelope areas, lot standards, building size, height, and number of dwelling units, in this case 1. The setbacks are met in the proposed plan, and the porch facing the primary street exceeds the required 120 square feet. No curb cuts are proposed off of the primary street or the side street of the house. It is a corner lot, so it's got. Next slide, please. The proposed front elevation seen on the top image meets the requirements for at least 2 massing articulations, including the varying roof line and depths, as well as the front porch. The exterior of the home will be constructed with vertical and horizontal siding and masonry. The applicant is proposing to use both vertical and horizontal siding and stone. Additionally, all the material and color changes occur along the vertical line at the interior concave corners and along the horizontal line at the floor and gable end. The proposed landscape plan meets the requirements of the street-facing yard in that at least 50% of the yard not occupied by driveways, sidewalks, or patios is landscaped area. The site development does show that the landscape is in excess of 100 square feet, and the applicant has proposed a high-efficiency drip irrigation in all planting beds. The tree and shrub equivalents have been proposed to meet the requirements of the landscaping standards. Regarding parking, the garage and adjacent carport and the alley-facing portion of the property will provide 3 on-site vehicle parking spaces and also room for parking and storage, so the landscaping and parking requirements are met in this proposal. So upon review of the site development plan at 23 Washington Avenue for a new residential structure that meets and follows the guidelines and standards of the Village House form type, staff finds that this request meets the applicable requirements of Section 1829 and 1829 through 21-4. Staff recommends ratification of the director's approval of the site development plan. This concludes staff's presentation. Thanks for listening. Myself and the applicant are here and available for questions.
Thank you. Just a quick reminder to Planning Commission that in order to not ratify the director's approval, we need to find clear error. And that's the standard, that's the proof of burden of proof that we need to meet. So if there is something that we find an error to the director's decision, then that's something that we can base our decision upon. So that's something that we should probably be focusing on, and specifically the standards for the Village House form type. So Commissioner Evans.
Thank you. So the Village House form type has a max square feet of 3,000 square feet, and the square footage of the new home is 5,620 square feet.
I believe, I'm not sure where you see that. I'm showing the proposed square footage is 2,654 square feet.
Might be the basement. It's included in that 5,000.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, the square footage is
26 something.
yes. You're right. The max floor is 2,000 square feet. The proposed above ground square footage is 2,654, which is how the square footage is calculated in this form type.
Okay. In your staff report on page 3, you have the 5,620 square foot. And that was what I was seeing as the potential for clear error.
On page 3?
Page 3 of the staff report for this case.
Included the basement.
So your in section C.
Right.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, okay.
So you didn't split out the,
Gotcha,
above
yes, I
ground
apologize
versus-
for that. That is definitely an oversight, but the above ground square footage is the 2,654.
Okay. Good catch. Thanks for clarifying. Is there anything else that we would like to have a conversation about on this application?
I'm trying to remember the, actually, no, we're still in questions, right? Is the applicant gonna speak?
Yeah, we can do that. So is there any other questions for staff specifically? Otherwise, we can bring forward the applicant. Okay, sure. Applicant, if you want to come forward, state your name and affiliation with the project.
I'm Chris Henderson. I'm the owner.
Okay. Is there anything you want to add to staff's presentation?
No.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
Thanks.
No? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. And there is no public comment on this application, so we will not open it up, but we can have further deliberation among Planning Commission, and if anyone feels comfortable, they can make a motion.
I do want to say, I mean, I can't remember in the code where we ended up on pitched roofs versus flat roofs, and I thought that was an actual requirement that we put in there, that in one of the standards that had to be that we couldn't have flat roofs. So Rick, Mr. Murphy, do you remember?
I'm sorry, I was conferring with counsel here. Could you repeat the question, please?
I thought a big part of the rewrite of the code was to eliminate flat roofs, and I thought we did that as a standard.
No. I mean, there are incentives to not do flat roofs, but it's not eliminated. There was no proposal to say you can't do flat roofs in Golden any longer. It was more about getting the incentives to do the gabled roofs with more opportunities for living space. So this proposal, as it is, complies even if it is a flat roof.
Okay, that's all I had then.
I sympathize, and I think this is probably something we should talk about at the end of the meeting. So, definitely agree with you. Is there any other comments on this one?
That was my,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, agreed. Is there a motion?
I'll make sure I've got the right page. I move to ratify the City of Golden Community, oh wait, am I on the right page here on the 23?
I think it
Yeah,
is.
okay.
Yep.
All right. I move to ratify the City of Golden Community and Economic Development Director's approval of the site development plan for 23 Washington Avenue as requested in case number PC 22-21, based on finding that all applicable standards in chapters 1829 and 1840 of the zoning code have been satisfied as detailed in the staff report prepared for the July 20th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting, and based on other evidence presented to the Planning Commission at the meeting on this case.
Second.
All right, can I get a roll call, please?
Evans?
Yes.
Rudder?
Yes.
Fraser?
Yes.
Yoshida?
Yes.
Scrabble?
Yes.
Colbert?
Yes.
Bulick?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Congratulations, your project has been approved. All right, and next item is probably where we want to have a conversation. It's to discuss any of the form of zone standards for potential future code amendments. So who wants to kick us off on this one? No?
I think we just saw two things that I was hoping to avoid with this new code change. One is the double duplexes side by side. That lot fit very well. They could have done it, what was it, a courtyard home, or it was eligible for 6 units. in a small cluster, and they chose to do exactly what has been done for years, which is what we were trying to de-incentivize. And the 23 Washington Avenue that we pulled off the consent agenda, that is another visually, that is also something that we were trying to avoid, the flat roofs. So I'm disappointed that in our first testing of the new code, we're already getting, like, half of the things that we saw were not what we intended when we set out to write the new code.
No, we're having a conversation here, sorry.
I'll make a public comment.
Oh, no, this is not public comment time. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think that, you know, we were aiming for more compatible architecture with the traditional neighborhoods that we have around, and I think that it's essentially described in that form type that it's found in a lot of the traditional neighborhoods, specifically North Golden. And so having something that looks very modern amongst the more traditional homes, it kind of sticks out. So I agree. I think this is something we should probably try to address further in future updates. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that? Agree, disagree?
I agree. I thought that was part of the new code. Just having the pitch roofs.
I think it'll take, some more cases for us to really see, but yeah, for these first ones, it was kind of tough to see that, those come across.
Nothing to add. I'm with you. Just the first substantive statement in the new rewrite is preserve and maintain and enhance the small town, in quotes, physical character of Golden, and had some concerns about the first case edition.
Okay. So is that something that you think that we can take a look at?
Sure. I think it's a different approach than what we took with, I mean, capturing the zoning codes typically are, they're trying to prevent the worst outcomes, right? They're trying to incentivize good outcomes and prevent the worst outcomes. And there is the opportunity to make it more prescriptive. You know, things like you can't have flat roofs. That could be something, but that is a kind of to me, that's a larger community conversation because there are plenty of people who do like flat roofs as well that we hear from. So I think it's a bigger question: is do we want to be that prescriptive in that regard? And unless we take duplexes off the table as a form type, I think we're going to continue to see duplexes because I think it's something that people are familiar with. And I think one of the from my perspective, I don't want to say staff because it's not everyone on staff necessarily, but I think if we can focus on incentives for things other than duplexes, because I know that's where we would like to go without banning duplexes. We made them smaller. You know, they have to conform to a much smaller, kind of size limitation now. But if we're going to incentivize, say, the clusters and such, that the cottage form types and clusters, I think we do have to take a harder look at incentives there. And we're starting to accumulate ideas on that. So as we're reviewing these cases, we see things that we think are good topics of conversation as well. We'll add this discussion to that list and keep that going. And over this next few months, we'll start looking at those and see what we can do in future updates. This is a good learning time for all of us, obviously. So I think there's already some ideas that it might involve more flexibility on things like square footage and parking and things like that to incentivize these things. But it's a good thing to look at.
Yeah, agreed.
What can you give us an idea of some of the incentivized ideas that you guys have been talking about on staff?
Well, I think some of one thing that's come up at least a couple times now is that village duplexes offer a size limit of 4,000 square feet total, so 2,000 per unit. I guess you could divide it up differently, but essentially 4,000 for the building. Whereas some of the cottage clusters, are less. So a cottage cluster is for 3 cottages, which is more units, you're still left with less square footage, 3,000 square feet on the same lot. So if that were equalized, that might be an incentive to have the 3-cottage cluster. It would mean more square footage.
Or
Those
less on the
cottages would get a
duplexes.
little bit bigger, or bring the duplex size down. At some point, things get too small for people's, for the marketability of the structure, so we have to balance that. But those, and then other things are, it's hard. It's sometimes hard to get the parking to work on the clusters as well.
Yeah.
But people have looked at both. I know that the duplex applicants looked at the clusters as well, and they ended up with the village duplex for some of those reasons. And so that might be an area to look at. If we really want to incentivize, we should at least equalize, I think.
Okay, good point.
Sorry, I was just noticing I'm going back to 23 Washington for just one moment. The building area calculations on the site plan say that there's 3,600 total square feet on the upper and main floor.
On the upper floor. I think the minimum lot size is 6,000 square feet, but this is specifically the.
So the village duplex, the home has a maximum
The
square footage of
village house.
3,000. Yeah. And this says there's 3,600 square feet on the upper and main. I just want to clarify if what you were saying earlier about the undergrounds or.
Yeah. The applicant just let me know, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to pull up the site plan right now, but it sounds like that number includes the garage, which wouldn't count in total square footage.
Okay, so that's the unfinished, but the total finished square feet is still over 3,000.
No, it's still 26.
The site plan says 3,096.
This is for the 23 Washington, the house?
Henderson residence. So upper floor finished square feet, 1,098. Main floor finished square feet, 1,000. I'm sorry, I can't read these numbers. But the total square feet is 3,096 finished. And then the 596 of unfinished.
Probably should be total, and then unfinished should be the 500 for the garage. Is that right?
So it might be including the
It includes
entry
the base.
porch and patio.
That's added at the, do you see the table that I'm
I
looking at?
see, you're looking at the table right here.
Is it the table?
Yeah, that's the table, so,
Includes the basement,
no, that includes the basement.
right?
Yeah, that includes the basement. So those two added. Upper
I mean,
and-
the reason why we do the calculations on the sheets is because each architect takes their own way of doing math. And so the reason why we take the calculations in the staff report is so that we can clarify the square footages, because there would be no way to tell each architect exactly how to put stuff on a plan and how they calculate, because everybody does it a little differently, frankly. So, I'm not sure, I can't do the quick math here, but my understanding is that the total square footage of each floor, of the upper floor, does not exceed the requirements on this. All right, I would.
Do you see this, the table that I'm talking about?
It says upper floor and then
Main
main
floor.
floor, and upper floor is 1,000 square foot.
1,098, main floor.
1,098.
Sorry.
Well, it's already been voted on.
Correct.
So.
Yeah, so this is a discussion that we're having.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, and your
We do have to,
Your
that's what
approval won't be-
staff is for.
yeah. Right, so your
Yeah.
approval's not going away.
Okay.
This is a conversation that we're having.
It sounds like Ms. Evans doesn't like flat
Excuse me,
roofs.
they can't take public comment at this point in the meeting. That
Okay,
wouldn't be.
well, they're having a discussion
I
past the
understand.
discussion.
They're allowed to discuss what's on the agenda, which is the general
Okay.
guidelines.
Right, so I guess as a point of order, the application's has already been approved. I think this is a conversation about how the square footage of the floor area is being described by staff versus the applicant versus what the standards are. So I think that that's going to be very important for us to clarify and for staff to be consistent on moving forward. It would be preferable if they could provide, an expectation to applicants that they provide it in a certain calculation. And so it's clear to us and clear to the director on what exactly the floor area is and if the standard is being met.
Sure. No, that's point well taken, and we did create some forms to assist with people with that in the very beginning. Obviously, the first round of applications, we had so many coming in at the same time. I'm not sure that everybody filled out the forms correctly, but that was the point of getting those forms, is to ensure that we weren't relying on how each architect did their math on their page, that we were being very clear about where the square footage numbers were coming from.
And I think that probably to voice a concern that some of the other commissioners might have too is that the staff verify the numbers that are being provided by the applicants, because I think that there could be room for misinterpretation of what we're asking for or otherwise.
Sure. Thank you for putting that on the record.
Thank you.
So where does the number that is in the staff report come from?
Yeah. So it should be from the review of the actual square footage of what was proposed. So if you look at several sheets, you have the footprint, lot coverage calculations on some of the sheets. You also have area calculations on other sheets, but the square footages really should be based upon what was shown on the plans. Obviously, in a plan like this, you have garage area, you have porch area, you have patio area, so there's lots of variables when it comes to how the numbers all kind of get thrown together. But we did verify the square footage with the applicant, seeing the various numbers and calculations of 2,654 square feet for the actual above ground finished floor calculation. And we can obviously also verify that at building permit to ensure that that's adhered to.
And I guess just for clarification, in terms of what we might consider unfinished, can you elaborate?
Sure. Unfinished square footage in the code is anything that is not enclosed or is not heated or cooled. So, meaning a basement area, or above ground. So there's it's not technically unfinished, but it doesn't count towards the calculation. So the calculation is based on finished conditioned square footage above ground. Below ground can be finished and conditioned. It does not count towards the total square footage of the structure. And anything unfinished, like a garage or anything that is only partially enclosed, like a patio or a porch, does not count towards square footage when it comes to square footage allowed, but it might count towards things like lot coverage if it were in a lot coverage. So it does count in a way, but just not for total square footage.
Okay.
So in something like this, you guys actually looked at the plans to look at the square footage as opposed to just taking the numbers off of the table from the architect?
Yeah, we verify the square footage shown on the sheets.
Gotcha. So maybe his just wasn't up to date or something when he did the tables.
Any other points of discussion that we want to bring up?
I will say I like the format that staff has come up with for providing the data and all the information to us for each of the cases. I think it was clear and very helpful, and having the I don't know if you did this on all of them, but I did appreciate having the form type page in there as well. So thank you. I think if you could stick with that format when you bring things to us, I really like that.
I'd second that. It was a lot easier to follow along than some of the other packets, so thank you.
Great.
All right. nothing else, we'll move on to the next item in our agenda, which is the discussion of possible referral items for other boards in the city. Anything? You sure? We can't end this meeting in less than an hour.
Oh, yes, we do. Sure we can.
Okay.
You're starting off on a good foot.
Yeah.
All right, and then in that case, we'll turn it over to other matters, which might include an update from our director on any upcoming cases.
Sure, we do expect to have more cases for you next month. What we would like to do, however, is do what we did this month and flip study session and regular hearing just to make those cases ready for review. So they will be ready for the August 17th meeting, but not for the August 3rd meeting. So what we'd like to do is have a study session on, it doesn't change your meeting schedule, it just changes the format of the meeting. So August 3rd, we would like to have our new long-range principal planner, Matt Lumpy, come and talk to you about the initiation of the bike and pedestrian master plan. So he's going to come and tell you, about the process, the engagement process, what the intent of the master plan is, and how that will proceed, and take your comments and questions and advisement. So that will be your first meeting of the month.
All right, thank you. Any other matters we want to discuss?
I've got a question. We talked about this years ago and again a year ago. Downtown bike parking. I think at one point there was some discussion around taking a parking spot and making it bike parking. I've noticed, as it's gotten busier this summer, there is not an abundance of bike parking downtown, so that makes people want to either not bring their bikes or walk their bikes everywhere. It's probably in the purview of MTAB or Parks and Rec, but
yeah, right now, I'll just let you know that staff is focused on bike parking along the creek corridor, where it seems to be needed even more. But I think downtown is a good choice as well. We do have some bike racks we can deploy along the creek right now, but we have done evaluations in the past of bike parking downtown. It would involve taking away parking spaces, which is never welcomed from the public, but it could be we could take another look at that too.
Or creative things like Miners Alley, because Miners Alley is closed to through traffic, so using some of that space for a lot of bike parking and just directing people there. Yeah,
though it is used sometimes for throughway as well. It's not always. It needs to be available for that, and so sometimes as in next week, the bar owners are going to have to move all their tables and chairs out because of Comcast going through. But when there are deliveries, things of that nature, those have to move. And so I think there are opportunities in adjacent parking spaces if we can come to an agreement on that. Such as the public parking between Meyer and the alley itself. There might be some opportunities within that area, and then other areas around town, maybe in the public right of way as well. And sometimes I think we could look at getting small, just 2-rack bike racks and disperse those. Those are easier to accommodate. If you do multiples of those, it's sometimes hard to find a stretch where you can put 6 or 7 bikes. That's the hardest thing to find, is to get that kind of space. But a couple bikes here and there, more scattered, could help really alleviate some of that too. But thank you. We'll take a look at that.
Thanks. May I ask a couple questions related to that? I'm new, so forgive me if these are dumb. Are there standards right now for bike parking, and what ratios that need to be adhered to everywhere?
Well, there are for new development. So
new development.
It's not retroactive. We can't force people who are already there. But so much of that is public bike parking at that point. It's city-initiated bike parking.
Okay.
But for when new developments come, especially in the commercial and multifamily realm, there are parking requirements for bikes.
And are there standards for historically for the city and ratios that are required for public bike parking?
Not for the city, just put on the city for bike parking? No, okay. That's just as needed and as we decide how much and where it goes.
Will this be included in the bike and ped plan?
That's a good question for Matt when he comes. I'll warn him that's coming, but that's a good one.
All right, any other matters? Last call? Okay. Then I guess I will, or I guess we need a motion to adjourn, right?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, meeting is adjourned.